So, Uncle Chris, this is a family history interview that we'll put on our family YouTube channel for everybody to check out and just ask you some questions about your childhood, about growing up, and memories that you have of your parents and your grandparents and things like that. So, if you want to start with whatever memory comes first.
Okay. Well, let's start at there's a Riverview Park, Sandy Point. They're both the same place. The first place I remember ever living in Newbern. Um, it was right beside the Neuse River, and we had a house there and everybody was living there at the time. All my brothers and sisters. Ben was living there, so everyone was there. Um, Everyone had been born. Of course, HL was not there because he had already died. But Ben was there. Margaret was there. David, Cookie, and me and Brenda and me in that order. So those are the original family right there. By the time I came along and we were living there, um, I guess HL had died, like I said. Mom and Dad, Dad was working for Weeks and Andrews, who's a subcontractor of a power company. So he was working for them. And pretty much as long as he worked after that, he was working for power companies. Later on, he worked in electrical work too, but it was for the city of Jacksonville. But back then, so this would have been in the 50s. I was born in 51. One of the earliest recollections I have was when Hurricane Hazel came in 1954. That would have been I would have been just about to turn 3, so I remembered it. I remember us having to leave that house because the floodwaters from the Neuse River came in, and my sister Cookie carried me, and we left the house, and we had to wade. They had to wade because Cookie was carrying me. They had to wade through floodwaters up to their waist to get away from the house, and they went over to a neighbor's house not too far away. So all of us left there and went over to that neighbor's house. So that's one of the first things that I remember. The other things were me and Brenda setting a fire in the woods and catching a little outbuilding on fire that was a tool shed for this guy. And of course we burned it down, and fire truck had to come, and I got a beating for that.
Is that a story she would admit to, or is she going to blame you?
She would blame me.
Okay.
But I tell you the truth, I can't remember who lit the match. But anyway, we tried to put it out, couldn't put it out, and we finally just took off. I remember we had lots of clovers around our house, and I'd go outside and try to hit the wasp that landed on it, and of course they'd sting me. And then my mother back then, she chewed chewing tobacco, and yes, she was a member of the church then. She was an early member, and so she hadn't quite quit that vice. And she took some chewing tobacco and chewed it up a little bit and stuck it on it, and it pulled the venom right out of it. Felt really good. I remember times when David would, we had a Harley Davidson motorcycle. He would ride that to school and back. Ben was in the backyard and took off on the motorcycle across the yard and hit the clothesline, knocked him off the motorcycle. So that was a good memory. A funny memory.
There was a story about him convincing Margaret that she could fly, And she jumped out of the second story window. Did you ever hear anything of that?
Well, not at, we never lived in a two-story house.
No.
There, in fact, no. So that's might be a fable. I'm not really sure. But now that first house in Sandy Point might have, it was built up high. So the first actual floor was probably about 4 feet up.
Okay.
So he might have convinced her to jump out of a window that seemed like it was on the second floor. I don't know. But I don't remember that. A lot of other memories around there. My brother, we were out at the Neuse River one day there's a dock, there was a pier out there. And we were out there playing around, and Ben's friends were there, and he called them friends. And one of them pushed me in the water, pushed me off the pier, and I couldn't swim. And my brother Ben had to jump in and pull me out of the water, and he beat the guy up because shouldn't have done it. So he was protecting me. After that, I took swimming lessons. Let's see. Dad was in and out. It wasn't too long. I think we probably lived there just a handful of years before we moved. When I was probably 6, we moved over to Saints Delight Road, which is where Jackie is living right now still. He lives around the curve from where we used to live over there. So we loaded up everything. They loaded up everything and moved over there to that house on Saints Delight Road. By that time, Ben was no longer there. In fact, before we moved, and maybe I better insert this, Margaret actually got married. And they had a little apartment down there it was near the river in an apartment. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. And I used to walk around, we lived kind of on a circle. I used to walk down to their house occasionally just to go over there to visit Margaret when Jim Graves was her husband. And so they had Nancy, so that would have been, 1958, I think, is when she was born. And right after she was born is when we moved. Moved over there, and my mom used to run a paper route, and most people know about that. If you don't, she worked for, she had delivered papers in New Bern, the Sun Journal, I think was the name of it. And when we were living in both houses, but the second one she worked more. And in fact, she took me and Brenda with her occasionally. So that paper route was kind of interesting because it gave Mom and us some income besides what my dad was making. And so we were in the second house by this time. And Margaret and Jim were still living over there in Riverview Park. Mom would, like I said, take us on the paper route with her sometimes. And Brenda, one of the things that happened to her was Mom ran into a ditch and rolled the car over, and Brenda was in the back seat and hanging on to the armrest. And of course they ended up fine. But Mom would take me sometimes with her, and I'd take my fishing pole with me, and she'd put me out. This is when you could trust people. And so she would put me out at this little store by a river, a bend in a river, and I'd go out there and fish during the day while she was gone and catch some fish. and I really did catch fish. So I'd catch fish while she was gone and just putter around out there having fun. Other times she'd take me. There was a family that was on her route. Johnny was just a few years older than me. Maybe I'll remember their names. But anyway, they were out in Vanceboro, which is in that area. Let's see. My grandma Wright and grandpa, I remember them coming to visit us when we were living in that house. I remember them coming one time, because not too long after that, grandpa died. So it was Grandma Wright and Grandpa, and there are some pictures, and Daniel may have pictures of this, of him unloading his car. It was like a 1952 Chevy or Ford or something. I can't remember what it was. So there were some pictures of him taking stuff out of the car to bring in the house. About that time, David was leaving home because he graduated high school, and so he joined the Air Force. So after when we moved over to the Saints Delight Road, he wasn't living there anymore. It was Cookie and me and Brenda, and Ben was not there anymore either because he had also married. Brenda remembers his wives better than I do, but he was married several times. The last one was when after we moved to Jacksonville, but while we were still living in New Bern, he had married Nancy or Barbara, I can't remember, Daughtry or something like that. And so, so he wasn't living there, David wasn't living there, Cookie was still there, and I remember her coming and going. She was still in high school at that time. She drove a school bus at the beginning, and in fact, I'm trying to remember if I rode her school bus or not. I can't really remember. Sometimes I might have. We visited Grandma and Grandpa Wright in their house in Lumberton. They were always in the same house over there. It was right down the street from Aunt Jerusha. And we would walk down there and visit with her while we were there. They lived kind of close to a cemetery. But she had Granny Wright had a little outbuilding. It was made of block, and she had storage out there. And she actually went out there. She had a washer and dryer out there in that building. It was separate from the house. She also had a little stove out there, so it's could have been an apartment if somebody wanted it to be. I kind of liked it. Granny Wright was a very meticulously neat person. She did not like for things to be put out of place, so I had to be very careful about what I did. So I stayed outside as much as I could because I would ruin things if I didn't. Let's see, getting back over to where we were living on Saints Delight Road, Brenda actually fell out of a tree over there. I remember that, and hurt her ankle when she was, of course, we were both very young over there. If I remember correctly, I think she was walking in her sleep, and she walked outside and went around and climbed up in a tree and fell out of the tree. Asked Brenda about that. Let's see. other memories of that time period, we made trips also to Rockingham to go see Granny Wilson. Um, Never saw Grandpa Wilson because he died before I was born. I think he died in 38 or something like that, or when he was 38. I don't know. Anyway, 1896. He was older than 38. So he had died before I was born. So we would go up there and visit her, and I could visit. All my cousins were still living in Rockingham at that time. So we would go up there, and I would either go over to my cousin Terry's house or to Eric's house usually. Once in a while I'd go over to Tony's house, or they would come over there, Tony D's. So it'd be Eric Davis or Tony D's. He had an older brother, Tim. Brothers and sisters too. And Aunt Sarah was their mother, Sarah D's. We had one of Dad's sisters lived right down the road. It was Virginia. She lived probably an eighth of a mile towards town, down Highway 1. And we would walk up there sometimes and visit Virginia. And years later, when I was in high school, I actually drove down to Rockingham and stayed with Aunt Virginia when me and my friends, I was old enough to drive at the time, went down there for the National Drag Racing Championship. So we stayed with Virginia at that time. That's when I was in high school, so she was still alive at that time. Let's see. Granny Wilson was always accommodating. We'd eat sandwiches over there, do whatever we wanted to, scrummage around. I almost never stayed in the house though. I was always outside or down the street or gone over to Eric's or Terry's house to visit with them. Trying to remember, Granny Wilson, she never came to our house. She didn't have a car, first of all. She didn't drive. So later on, as years went by, Mom and Dad went down there and stayed with her and took care of her in the final years of her life. My Mom did most of the caretaking. Let's see. Granny Wright, I think she lived by herself after Grandpa died in Lumberton. So she never, I don't think she ever had any caregivers there. She died while she was living alone. Of course, we went to all of their funerals when time came. Trying to think if there's anything else that I'm sure there's plenty more that could be said if prompted.
Do you remember anything about H.L.'s gravesite? They're in Lumberton. It's in New Hollywood Cemetery. And the headstone was not put there when he died. It was put there later.
Yeah.
And so if you look at Grandma and Grandpa Wright, his is just kind of diagonally off of theirs, kind of in a different spot, not in a row with the rest of them. And it was always said that he would go in the cemetery and look for the big tree, and this many steps this way and this many steps that way, and that's where he was. And they kind of plopped the headstone down there later, kind of in the general area.
Well, I just remember going there to the cemetery, and it was, in fact, I don't even think I went there then. I may have. gone over there at that time. I didn't stay, didn't go over to the cemetery too much by myself. But we went there later, and after his headstone was there, and visited there. So yeah, I do remember it.
Because he has a headstone in New Bern as well. Grandma Papa's has his name listed on the opposite side, and he's physically in Lumberton, but he has a headstone in New Bern as well.
Okay.
So I don't know if you knew that.
I don't remember the one in New Bern.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it's 4 names, it's 2-sided stone. You got Margaret on one side and HL's right there.
mm-hmm.
And so Uncle Lee always says, well, that spot belongs to me. My name's already on it. The dates are just wrong. So.
Well, he could claim that, I guess, if he wanted to.
What do you remember about Granny Wilson as far as, didn't y'all go out to Salt Lake with her at one point?
Yeah, what happened was I only went to Salt Lake once.
Right.
And that was when I went on my mission.
And was she with you on that trip?
And let's see, that was me and Mom and Dad, and a friend of mine, Michael Jordan was his name. Not the Michael Jordan, but a Michael Jordan went with us, and Granny Wilson went. So that's when I left, when I was going to leave to go on my mission. We went out there. We got there a week, not quite a week early. We got there on purpose early so that Mom and Dad could visit out there. But yeah, Granny Wilson went with us. So we put station wagons back then were pretty big, and you could put a mattress in the back of the darn thing and go back there and lay on it if you wanted to. So we had we took turns kind of doing that. But yeah, she went with us out there, and it was a good trip. Of course, I went one way.
Right.
And Michael went, actually, he went one way too, because he ended up flying back. So it was Mom and Dad and Granny Wilson drove back on their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever remember your parents taking you to Georgetown at all?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm. We didn't ever go there. We took many trips up to the mountains for vacations. When I was growing up, went up there many times. In fact, that's where we went most of the time. When we went on a vacation, that's where we went. We went to Lumberton and Rockingham kind of frequently. We ended up probably in Lumberton maybe every other month, and in Rockingham about every 3 months.
Right.
Something like that when I was growing up. So we visited both of my grandmas who were without grandpas, grandpa, kind of often. So we stayed in close touch with them as they got older.
Do you remember meeting Aunt Della Venters? She's the one that lived to be 104. He used to play the auto harp, something like that.
No.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
Okay.
I know her. I knew of her, but I don't remember meeting Aunt Della.
Okay.
I could have and just don't remember it.
Right.
Because when I met people, I'd have been very young. I have to look back and see what year she actually passed away to know for sure, but pretty sure I never got to meet Aunt Della.
Okay. So pretty much your grandmothers are kind of the oldest people back that you remember in the family?
Yeah, and
Jerusha.
my cousins, Jerusha was right down the street. Mary Ruth also lived in Lumberton at that time, and they moved around because her husband was in the military, and she had a son, Willie, and he was a few years older than me, But when we drove, when I was in the 7th grade, we drove out to California, and we stopped at their house. They had moved out to Arizona by that time. And we stopped at their place in New Mexico on our way to California, and visited with them on the way. But yeah, so Mary Ruth and their family. Kermit was another one of Mom's brothers that I saw him a couple of times. He was always, most of the time was in Alaska.
Right.
Was where him and his family were.
Out west in Arizona, do you remember meeting Letty Hunt?
No.
Okay, that would have been Granny Wilson's niece. Their family moved out there in 1901, and she became like a postmaster. Like, she was real prominent in the area.
Uh-huh.
And there was stories of the family going out and visiting her. She did a lot of family history work out there. I don't know if you recalled ever meeting her.
No.
No. Okay.
No. In fact, on that side of the family, which is my Granny Wright's side, my mom's family, I had to go down the list of her brothers and sisters, but Kermit and Spencer lived right there in Lumberton, and he owned a garage body shop there in Lumberton. In fact, until he died, he lived right there in Lumberton. Spencer was kind of he stayed to himself. He wasn't very social. The ones that were social didn't actually. Kermit, he was a nice guy, but he didn't live there. He was always in Alaska or somewhere else. And then Mary Ruth, saw her occasionally, and I'd have to look to see what other brothers and sisters she had.
Right.
I don't remember. My dad's sisters, Aunt Cecil, she married Ralph Davis, and that's where the Davis line comes in. So Cecil was his sister. Sarah was his sister, and she married the Dees. Last name was Dees. Juanita was another one of his sisters, and Georgia was one of his sisters.
And Virginia that you mentioned earlier.
And Virginia, yeah.
And I always remember Virginia, her second husband was Dwight Grider.
Grider.
And he used to do the woodwork.
Yeah, I guess so. I just don't remember it. I just remember his name.
Yeah.
And they called him Grider.
Yeah. He used to do the tree, like the logs, and carve the ball in the middle that you tip back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And gave them out to us when we'd come to visit. Yeah.
Well, that's funny.
So. You remember going to Granny's? I forgot what birthday it was, like 88 or something. It was in the late 70s at that church that we have the DVD of, that Mike Culver made. And you remember going to that?
Well, I went to all of them, so
yeah,
probably.
I think that was the only one that ever got recorded. So the rest of them were just memories, but that one got put on a DVD, and they did a big to-do about it. And
okay.
Then afterwards, Mike went back to Granny's house and interviewed her and Sarah and Virginia and Juanita, and did like personal interviews and got some stories that way too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Mike was George's son. Before, that was a different marriage, I think. Culver was his last name, and the rest of them, can't even remember their last names.
Drummond.
Drummond, yeah.
Yeah, because Mike's dad got killed in World War II.
Oh, okay.
And then she remarried.
Yeah.
That's where that came.
Yeah. and let's see, the other cousins, Perry, Perry Parks.
Yeah, Idell.
Yeah.
It's Idell's son.
Yeah. In fact, Perry was born the same day Cookie was born. The same day.
Nice.
Not just the same birthday, the same day. They both were born on the same day. Let's see.
That's interesting because Perry's mom died giving birth to him.
That's right.
And Cookie's middle name is Idell.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why they named her that.
Yeah. Did you ever hear a story about Uncle David in Vietnam and them telling Grandma that he had died?
Well, what happened was there was another David Wilson that died. And the story got around, not so much with us, but with his group back in the Air Force. And when everybody saw him again, they said, "Hey, we thought you were dead." He said, "No, it's the other David Wilson."
He always told us a story about changing his name because his name was Jerry.
Yeah, well, that was a thing. He didn't like his name. And I don't remember what age he was when he changed it, but his name was Jerry Alton Wilson. And when he went to the records office, I guess, he wanted to change his name, and apparently his name was not even recorded. And so when he found that out, that his name was not recorded, he said, "So what I tell you is what you'll put?" And they said yes. So he didn't have to pay anything. He just got it recorded that he was David Alton Wilson. And again, I can't remember what. I don't think he was very old, because in some of the newspaper articles that came out when he was 13 years old, he was already David. So, let's see. David married a couple of times. He was married first to Eleanor Hicks from New Bern. That was his first marriage, and they stayed together for just a few years. Then he married another girl. I think her name was Shantae or something.
That's his daughter's name. That's Eleanor's, I think, daughter. His and Eleanor's daughter.
But the wife's name might have been different.
Yeah.
But Shantae was the daughter.
There you go.
Of her.
Is it Sherry?
I can't remember.
Sherry Faye Norman, I think, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask David. That might be hard. Oh yeah, just for the date's sake, me and Brenda and Betty and Nancy Betty and Lee are the only ones still living out of the whole group. Let's see. Trying to remember. So while Cookie was, by the way, when we were still living in New Bern and on Saints Delight Road, Cookie drove the school bus. I actually rode my bike to school quite a few times, and back in those days was when boys played with marbles, and they'd play marble games. In fact, we had marble tournaments at our school when I was in elementary school there. But I would ride my bike to school, and the school was right down on the Neuse River. The backyard of the school went right down to the river. One day I came riding back from school, and this is when I had gotten my English Racer. well, that had brakes on the handlebars instead of down at your feet. At that time, those were the first ones. And I went into my driveway without my hands on the wheels because I was just kind of showing off, you know. Nobody out there to show off to. But when I hit the driveway, it had a little dip and the handlebars turned, and the brake of the handlebar stabbed me right beside my hip, and I had to go get stitches because of that little injury. In fact, it was an embarrassing time because my mom had several ladies over there at the house, and she took me in there on the floor and pulled my pants down in front of them, and I was very embarrassed. Trying to remember if there's quite a few other things that went on during those times. I mean, we went to church. I haven't even brought the church up in all this. The church in New Bern was a brick church. It's kind of nice to meet in a building. But we would go in the middle of the week for primary. They'd have primary activities in the middle of the week. And on Sundays, some of my earliest memories was going and sitting in the pews, and I was very, very young, of course, and I'd get down under the pew and crawl around and rub the stockings of the ladies that were, they had the seam in the stockings, you know, so I'd get down and I'd be rubbing their legs, and it was kind of interesting. Let's see. In fact, we've got a couple of pictures of Mom and Dad were standing out in front of that church. It was Mom and Dad and Margaret were standing out in front of the church, and there were two other girls standing there with them, and I don't know I can't remember their names, but it was taken out in front of the church. I would climb in the trees outside when church was over and just waiting for Mom and Dad to go. We had a couple of pictures, and I don't know if they're still in existence because I don't remember seeing them recently. Of when we got out of church, we drove right by the river and went down there to this little site down there that was built by the city. They took pictures of me and Brenda and Dad right there next to the river on the way home from church. Let's see. Trying to remember if there's any other just natural things going on.
Well, that's about 40 minutes worth right there. That's
wow.
Pretty, yeah. Don't even realize, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. That's a lot of content and definitely a lot of good stories for us to preserve, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot more that can be said about later life and things like that. David being in the military and us visiting and all that, but you could really get stretched out on a lot of that.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure we'll come back and dig into some more of it in a different video, because there's some stories that Aunt Brenda has sent me where she had recorded him telling a story, and that can kind of open a can of worms.
David telling a story?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we've got audio of him telling some stories. So
okay.
Yeah, I think this will do for now. We'll wrap it up, and then maybe we'll do another video another time and dig into some other stuff.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect.